At a university where brilliance is worshipped and janitors are barely seen, a teenage boy quietly mopping floors stuns the faculty with a mathematical solution no one else could crack. Leo, the son of a silent laborer, steps from the shadows into the blinding light of academic scrutiny, not for glory but to defend his father's dignity. As whispers of a prodigy from the margins begin to ripple through the halls, a question lingers. What happens when genius appears in a place it was never meant to exist? If you liked the video and subscribe to the channel, let's move on to our story. Enjoy watching. The late afternoon sun, a weak and watery thing, struggled to pierce the high windows of the university's mathematics department. It cast long indifferent shadows down the polished hallways, which smelled of lemon polish and the cold, stale air of intellectual rigor. For David, a janitor who had walked these floors for 20 years, the scent was a constant reminder of a world that was not his. He was a silent presence, a ghost in the machine of academia, a man whose existence was marked only by the absence of dirt. His hands, calloused and thick from a lifetime of labor, had a different kind of knowledge than the professors who walked past him without a glance. He knew the precise angle to hold a mop to get into a stubborn corner, the quietest way to close a door so as not to disturb a lecture, the exact pressure to apply to erase a stubborn marker stain. These were not the skills that earned him respect, but they were the only ones that fed his family. Today his son Leo was with him, a quiet and solemn boy of 16. Leo was tall for his age, a lanky frame that seemed to hold attention that went beyond adolescent awkwardness. He was a shadow of his father, mirroring David's silent movements as he pushed a bucket of soapy water down the hall. But there was a difference, a chasm between them born of a modern world's cruelty. David had been humiliated by casual indifference. Leo had been scarred by overt malice. He carried the sting of 1,000 dismissive looks, the weight of whispered slurs, the memory of being told to his face that he didn't belong in the advanced classes he aced. Leo's silence was not a choice, it was a shield, a retreat into a world of his own where logic and numbers offered a clean, unassailable truth that the human world denied him. They were tasked with cleaning the office of the Olympiad Committee, a collection of 3 of the university's most esteemed minds. As they pushed through the heavy oak door, the scent of old paper and lukewarm coffee hit them. The room was a controlled chaos of stacked books, scattered formulas, and whiteboards covered in a dense thicket of symbols. 3 figures stood clustered around one of the boards, their backs to the door. Dr. Albright, the head of the department and a man whose ego seemed to demand an audience, was a portly figure with a neatly trimmed white beard and a permanent air of self-importance. He was gesturing wildly at the board, his voice booming. "No, Chin, the substitution is flawed. It presupposes a linearity that is simply not present in the domain. We need to consider the topological manifold first." Dr. Chin, a much younger professor with a tired face and glasses that had slid down his nose, pushed them back up with a sigh. "The manifold is irrelevant if the initial conditions are not stable. The instability propagates too quickly." The third professor, Anya Sharma, was a stark contrast to the 2 men. She was young, sharp, and dressed in a simple, elegant blouse. Her dark eyes were fixed on the board, and she was tapping a marker against her chin. "Gentlemen, what if we're looking at it all wrong? What if the solution isn't about an elegant simplification but a brute force approach that reveals a deeper pattern?" David and Leo moved into the room, their entry barely registering. David nodded a silent greeting which went unacknowledged. He picked up a wastebasket overflowing with crumpled paper, the discarded wreckage of intellectual struggle. Leo, his head bowed, took the mop and began to methodically clean the stained floor, a perfect and humbling counterpoint to the abstract arguments unfolding above him. As he worked, his gaze drifted upward as it always did in these rooms. The equations on the boards were like intricate tapestries, each symbol a thread woven into a complex design. He couldn't help himself. He was a moth to the flame of pure logic. Most of the boards were a jumble of failed attempts, but one in the center held a single, pristine question, a masterpiece of mathematical cruelty. It was a problem designed to weed out all but the most brilliant minds, a true test for the International Olympiad. A complex sequence of integrals, a nested series of summations, a problem that would take most of the professor's days to solve. A knot of thought that demanded a kind of clarity and patience that few possessed. David finished emptying the trash and was about to move to the next task when Dr. Albright finally noticed them. His face tightened into a sneer of mild distaste. "Try not to make too much noise, please, David. We are on the verge of a breakthrough." David's face flushed a dull red. "Yes, sir," he said, his voice a low rumble. It was in that moment, witnessing his father's quiet humiliation, that something in Leo snapped. The frustration, the injustice, the years of being a ghost in these halls all came to a head. He stopped mopping, the wet cloth leaving a perfect, clean semicircle on the floor. He swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. May I try to solve it?" The room fell silent. Dr. Chin and Anya Sharma turned to look at him, their expressions a mix of confusion and curiosity. Dr. Albright, however, let out a loud, derisive snort. "You?" he scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension. "The Olympiad is not a puzzle for boys, son. This is a problem for the most elite minds in the world. Stick to your mop." David's face was a mask of mortification. "Leo, no," he hissed, his hand reaching for his son's arm. But Leo pulled away, his eyes fixed on the board. "Please," he repeated, his voice gaining a quiet, firm strength. "I think I see a different way." Anya Sharma, seeing the fire in his eyes, hesitated. "Albright, let him," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "What's the harm? It's just a moment's distraction." Dr. Albright huffed, a theatrical sigh of resignation. "Fine. But be quick. And don't make a mess." Leo didn't respond. He simply walked to the board, picked up a piece of chalk and began to write. He wasn't hesitant, wasn't tentative. There was no erasure, no correction. His hand moved with a fluid, confident rhythm, a blur of motion as he filled the empty space on the board with a solution that seemed to unfold with an unstoppable logic. The professors, who had watched him with mocking smiles, slowly leaned in. Their expressions shifted from amusement to perplexity, then to a dawning, disbelieving awe. The solution was not what any of them had considered. It was not a brute force method, nor a topological one. It was something else entirely, an elegant, shockingly simple path to the correct answer. When Leo finally put the chalk down, a profound silence filled the room. The perfect, pristine solution stood on the board, a testament to a mind they had just dismissed. Dr. Albright, his mouth agape, looked from the board to the boy, then back to the board. The humiliation that had been David's a moment ago had now been transferred, a perfectly balanced equation of its own. The silence in the office was no longer the polite, academic quiet of minds at work. It was a thick, heavy vacuum, a pause in time that had swallowed every sound. David, frozen with the mop still in his hand, stared at the immaculate solution on the whiteboard. He had lived his life in the margins, and he had taught his son to do the same. This was not the silence of a mistake, but the deafening roar of a paradigm shift. It was the sound of a universe he understood perfectly being irrevocably altered by a simple piece of chalk. Dr. Albright, his face a mottled shade of red and his meticulously trimmed beard seeming to bristle with indignation, was the first to break the stillness. He took a single, unsteady step toward the board, his eyes scanning the elegant, flowing lines of logic. His mind, trained for decades in the complex ballet of higher mathematics, was racing to find a flaw, a single error that would restore the universe to its proper, predictable order. He found none. The solution was not just correct. It was an act of pure, unadulterated genius. It was a path so direct, so shockingly unobvious, that it bypassed all the convoluted avenues he and his colleagues had been exploring. He felt a cold sweat form on his brow, the bitter taste of defeat on his tongue. This is a trick," he stammered, his voice a pathetic squeak of its former booming self. "He's memorized a solution. He must have seen it before. It's impossible otherwise." But Dr. Chin, who had been peering over Albright's shoulder, was already shaking his head in awe. His tired face had woken up, his eyes now shining with a newfound energy. "No, Albright, it's not. The problem was just created this morning. I wrote the last term myself. And the method is entirely novel. He used a form of modular arithmetic to simplify the nested series in a way I didn't even consider. It's beautiful." Anya Sharma, her back still to the door, had walked slowly to the board. She didn't touch it, but simply stood before it, as if gazing upon a rare and priceless work of art. She saw in the chalk lines not just a solution but a mind at work. She saw the audacious leap of logic, the confidence of a mind unburdened by conventional wisdom. She saw the pure, undiluted passion for the problem itself. She turned slowly, her gaze falling not on David but on Leo. Leo, however, was not basking in the glow of his achievement. The chalk was still clutched in his hand, but his eyes were on his father. He saw the mix of pride and fear in David's face, the slight tremor in his hand as he held the mop. The victory was hollow. The humiliation was still fresh. He had not sought glory, he had sought to erase a stain not just from the floor but from his father's dignity. The act had been an impulse, a flash of pure, righteous anger channeled through the only language he had ever truly known. "Leo," David said, his voice a shaky whisper. "We have to go. We're disturbing them." The words, so steeped in a lifetime of deference, cut through the academic wonder of the room. They reminded everyone of the stark, social reality of the situation. Leo was a janitor's son, not a prodigy. He was supposed to be silent, invisible. His place was on the floor, not at the whiteboard. Anya Sharma took a step toward them, her face filled with an expression of quiet intensity. No, you're not disturbing us. You've just shown us that we've been blind. All of us." She looked pointedly at Albright. "This boy, he has a mind that sees things differently. In a way that we, with all our years of training and institutional arrogance, have forgotten how to." Dr. Albright sputtered, "Anya, please. We can't just. This is an absurd situation. He's not one of our students. We have protocols. We have standards." "Standards for what, Albright?" she shot back, her voice now sharp as a scalpel. "For excluding talent because it doesn't come in a neatly packaged box with a pedigree? The Olympiad is about finding the best minds, wherever they may be. And right now, the best mind in this room is not one of us. It's him." She walked right up to Leo, her eyes meeting his. She didn't patronize him or praise him excessively. She saw him not as a janitor's son but as a peer. "Leo," she said, her voice firm but gentle, "this is a gift. The way you see things, the connections you make, it's something you can't teach. You can only nurture it. The Olympiad is 2 months away. You've just shown that you could be one of the best in the world. But you can't do it alone." She looked at David, and for the first time, her voice softened. "David, you have a brilliant son. More brilliant than any of us in this room. The university can provide him with a full scholarship, all the resources he needs. I would personally mentor him. We can prepare him. He can represent our country. But we need your permission. Both of you." The weight of the world seemed to settle on David's shoulders. He looked from the professors to the pristine solution to his son's face. He saw the flicker of hope in Leo's eyes, a light that had been extinguished by years of quiet suffering. He saw the open door, the escape from the world of lemon polish and dismissive glances. But he also saw the risk. The vulnerability of putting his son out in the open, where the same world that had been cruel to him could see him, judge him, and maybe even break him. Leo, seeing his father's internal struggle, put his hand on David's arm. He squeezed gently. "Dad," he said, his voice still quiet but filled with a new, powerful resolve. "I want to try." David looked into his son's eyes and he saw not a child but a young man. A man who had just stood up for himself and for his father. The decision was no longer his alone. He swallowed hard, the years of quiet servitude finally giving way to a fierce, protective pride. He looked at Anya Sharma and nodded slowly. "We'll do it," he said, his voice stronger now, a man making a choice that would change everything. "We'll do it." The 3 professors exchanged a look. Albright was still fuming, but Chen and Sharma were smiling, a true, brilliant joy lighting up their faces. The silence was broken, but it was replaced not with the sound of cleaning, but with the quiet hum of a new, improbable future being born. The Olympiad was not just a competition. It was now a beacon of hope, a battle for recognition, and a chance for a son to build a world where his father would no longer have to be invisible. The heavy oak door of the Olympiad Committee office felt different now. 2 days ago, it was the entryway to a world of silent labor and polite dismissal. Today it was the threshold of an entirely new life. Leo stepped inside, not with a mop, but with a book bag slung over his shoulder, a borrowed one from the university library. The scent of old paper and lukewarm coffee was the same, but to him, it now carried a subtle hint of possibility. The late afternoon sun, which had once felt so indifferent, now seemed to illuminate the white boards with a golden, hopeful glow. Anya Sharma was already there, hunched over a laptop, her dark hair pulled back into a simple ponytail. She looked up as he entered and offered a small, genuine smile. There was no fuss, no grand ceremony. Just a quiet acknowledgement that the world had changed. "Leo," she said, her voice warm and direct. "Glad you could make it. We have a lot of work to do." She gestured to a small table in the corner, cleared of its usual clutter. "Sit down. We're not starting with the Olympiad problems just yet. We're starting with you." Leo sat down, his hands clasped nervously in his lap. Dr. Chin, who was packing up his briefcase, gave him a friendly nod and a wink as he left. Dr. Albright, however, was nowhere to be seen. He had, as Dr. Chin explained with a wry smile, taken a sudden, urgent sabbatical. His absence, though a relief, hung in the air like a ghost of institutional resistance. Anya pushed a single sheet of paper across the table. On it was a list of seemingly disparate mathematical concepts: prime numbers, graph theory, the principles of formal logic, and a peculiar subfield of abstract algebra. Most of the students we select for this have a very traditional education. They are excellent at what they've been taught. But you, Leo, you're a blank slate. You have a raw, untainted intuition. We need to build on that without ruining it. These are the foundations we need to check first. Don't tell me what the definitions are. Show me how you see them. Explain them to me like I've never seen them before. This was not a test, it was an invitation. An invitation to speak the language he had only ever spoken to himself. He picked up a pencil and for the next 2 hours he explained his world. He described prime numbers not as integers divisible only by themselves and 1, but as the fundamental building blocks of all other numbers, the atoms of arithmetic, that held a deeper, more profound truth. He spoke of graph theory by drawing intricate networks of dots and lines, describing them as the social fabric of numbers, where each number had a relationship with every other. His explanations were not academic. They were poetic, intuitive, and breathtakingly original. Anya Sharma listened, her eyes fixed on his every word, jotting down notes not on the concepts themselves, but on his unique methods of visualization. She saw a mind that had been forced to learn in isolation, creating its own rules and its own pathways, and in doing so, had stumbled upon a level of clarity that was lost to those who had followed the well-worn paths of formal education. "Remarkable," she said when he was done, a genuine sense of wonder in her voice. "Your mind works in a way that is fluid. It's not a library of facts, it's a living landscape of ideas." She then pulled out a new problem, a problem that was part of a mock Olympiad. It was a complex problem involving dynamic programming and combinatorial analysis, a problem designed to test a student's ability to combine multiple fields of mathematics. It was a problem that would take most of her students' hours, if not days, to solve. "Try this," she said simply. "Show me how you get there." Leo stared at the problem. He didn't pick up the pencil immediately. He closed his eyes, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was not reciting formulas. He was walking the mental landscape he had just described. He was seeing the problem not as a series of steps but as a story, with characters and conflicts and a clear, inevitable resolution. After what seemed like an eternity, he opened his eyes, picked up the pencil, and without a single hesitation began to write. His movements were confident, decisive. There were no false starts, no wasted lines. He filled the paper with a dense but elegant proof, using a hybrid of his own intuitive methods and the formal logic that he seemed to absorb by osmosis. When he was done, he pushed the paper across the table. It was the same flawless, effortless brilliance from 2 days before, but this time, it was not an impulse. It was a testament to the power of a mind unleashed. As the evening wore on and the moon began to rise, David was on the other side of the university campus, mopping the floors of the chemistry labs. He was alone, but his mind was not. He kept replaying the scene from the office. The shame, the anger, and then the sheer, blinding pride. He wondered what Leo was doing, what new world he was inhabiting. He imagined his son, a figure of silent diligence, still with a mop in his hand, but now he saw him with a piece of chalk, a piece of his son's mind, a key to a world David could only see from the outside. He looked up at the moon, its light glinting off the polished floors, and he felt a new kind of silence. Not the silence of being unseen, but the expectant quiet of a future that was finally within reach. The transition from janitor's son to university prodigy was a seismic shift that no scholarship, no mentor, and no amount of brilliant math could truly prepare Leo for. His days now began not with the sterile smell of floor polish, but with the scent of freshly printed paper and the low hum of the university's quiet, cavernous library. He was given a student ID, a small key that unlocked a new world of resources and privilege, but the card felt heavy and foreign in his pocket, a constant reminder of the life he had left behind. Anya Sharma had been a fierce and protective guide, shielding him from the university's bureaucratic machinery. She had secured his place on the Olympiad team, a quiet coup that had raised more than a few eyebrows among the faculty. The final piece of the puzzle was to introduce him to his peers, the other 3 candidates chosen to represent the country. They were all brilliant, all from prestigious schools, and all perfectly groomed for this moment. The meeting took place in a small, windowless classroom used for high-level seminars. The air was tense with the unspoken rivalry that simmered beneath the surface of every polite greeting. Julian, a tall, impeccably dressed young man with a smirk that seemed permanently etched on his face, was the first to speak. His family was old university money, and his academic career had been a flawless march of perfect scores and accolades. "So you're the one," Julian said, his voice dripping with thinly veiled amusement. "The janitor's son prodigy. A real Cinderella story, I suppose. I hope you're ready for more than just a fairy tale." The other 2 candidates, a girl named Lena with a sharp, analytical stare and a boy named Marco who seemed more interested in his phone than anyone else, watched the exchange with detached curiosity. They didn't mock him outright, but their silent judgment was just as heavy as Julian's condescension. Anya stepped in, her tone even but firm. "Julian, that's enough. Leo is here because he has a mind that can solve problems you and I can't. This is a team and we all have something to learn from each other." Julian scoffed. "With all due respect, Dr. Sharma, I don't think I have much to learn from a boy who's never seen a tensor until yesterday. Let's see what he's really made of. Or did you already solve all the problems for him in private?" The jab was so low and so public that the air in the room crackled. Leo felt the familiar burn of humiliation, a sensation that felt like a phantom limb he could no longer afford to feel. He looked at Anya, whose face was a mask of controlled fury, and he knew he had to respond. Not with words, but with the one thing they couldn't take away from him. "I can solve any problem you put in front of me," Leo said, his voice quiet but steady. Julian's eyes lit up with a predatory glee. He walked to the whiteboard, his movements a theatrical show of confidence, and scrawled a problem that was a classic Olympiad killer. A fiendishly complex question involving number theory in modular forms, designed to trap brilliant minds in a maze of calculations. It was a problem he had spent weeks on, a problem whose elegance was matched only by its difficulty. "Let's see it then, your intuitive genius," Julian sneered. The room fell silent. Lena and Marco finally looked up, intrigued. This was the moment of truth. Leo walked to the board. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even look at the problem for more than a few seconds. He had already seen the core of it, the simple, elegant truth at its heart that Julian had missed. He saw the pattern, the hidden sequence, the way a complicated equation could be reduced to a stunningly simple truth if you just knew where to look. He picked up the marker and began to write, his hand moving with the same unhesitating confidence he had shown Dr. Sharma. His solution was not a series of complex steps but a single, brilliant leap of logic, a pivot that turned the entire problem on its head. He used a lemma he had discovered on his own, a small, elegant truth he had found while playing with numbers in his head. The other candidates, who had been watching with detached superiority, slowly began to lean in. They saw what he was doing, and they saw that it was completely different from anything they had ever learned. They saw the elegant, undeniable truth of his method, a method that Julian's years of formal education had never allowed him to see. When he was done, he put the marker down without a word. Julian stared at the board, his face pale with a mixture of shock and rage. He had prepared for a flawed solution, a clumsy attempt he could easily dismiss. He had not prepared for an act of pure genius. He looked from the board to Leo, his carefully constructed world of intellectual superiority crumbling around him. Anya broke the silence, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. "I told you. There is something to learn from each other." She looked at Leo, a warmth in her eyes that was both proud and protective. "Your method is fascinating. We will build on that." But Leo's victory felt hollow. He had won the battle, but the war was far from over. He knew that Julian's mockery would not end, but would simply become more subtle, more vicious. The resentment, the jealousy, the casual prejudice, it was a problem no equation could solve. He was an outsider who had been invited into a world that didn't want him, and he was being forced to prove his worth every single day. As he walked home that evening, the sun had set, and the streetlights cast long, lonely shadows. He was still a janitor's son, still walking these same familiar streets. But now, when he looked up at the stars, he no longer saw just a random scattering of light. He saw patterns, sequences, equations, an infinite tapestry of numbers waiting to be deciphered. He had a gift, a key to a universe of pure, unassailable truth. But he also had a weight, the weight of two worlds, and the crushing expectation that he would have to carry both of them on his own. The weeks that followed Julian's public humiliation were an exercise in psychological warfare. The open mockery had vanished, replaced by something far more insidious, a calculated, suffocating silence. In the seminar room, Julian and his clique would pretend Leo didn't exist, their conversations and inside jokes forming an invisible wall that Leo could see but not breach. He was an anomaly, a variable in their perfect equation, and they were trying to solve him by simply ignoring him. Leo felt the weight of their judgment every time he entered the room, every time he sat down at the table. He found himself questioning his own presence, a feeling of imposter syndrome taking root in his mind. He would sit for hours with a problem, and the elegant, fluid logic he had once commanded would stutter and stall, bogged down by the persistent, nagging whispers of self-doubt. Anya, ever perceptive, noticed the change. She saw the familiar fire in his eyes dimming, the confident hand that had filled the whiteboard now hesitating over a simple proof. One evening, after a particularly silent and difficult study session, she walked him to the library door. "Leo," she said, her voice soft but direct, "you can't let them get into your head. Your mind is a gift, and it's the only thing that matters in that room. Not their money, not their schools, not their snide remarks. Just your ability to see the truth. They are trying to make you small so they can feel big. Don't let them." But the words, while kind, felt like a distant echo. The academic pressure was immense, a cascade of new concepts and complex problems that he had to absorb at a breathtaking pace. He was no longer just solving a single problem. He was building an entire new intellectual foundation from scratch. The world of math that had once been a refuge was now a demanding, unforgiving master. He felt a deep loneliness, a chasm between his old life and his new one, a gap that his father could not cross and his new mentor could not fully bridge. Late that night, long after the library had emptied, Leo sat alone in his room. A problem, a devilishly clever piece of combinatorial geometry, was spread out on his desk. He had been staring at it for hours, the numbers and shapes blurring into an illegible mess of failure. The elegant solution he was looking for seemed to slip through his fingers like sand. He felt a wave of despair wash over him, a sense of crushing exhaustion that was more than just physical. He was tired of proving himself. Tired of the cold stares. Tired of being the janitor's son. A soft knock on the door startled him. His father, David, stood in the doorway, a weary smile on his face. He had just finished his second shift, and his hands, though washed clean, still held the faint, lingering scent of industrial soap. He didn't come in immediately but simply stood there, a silent presence. "Still working?" David asked, his voice a low, comforting rumble. He walked over to the desk and looked down at the problem. He couldn't read the symbols, couldn't comprehend the intricate logic, but he could see the frustration in his son's eyes. Leo sighed, pushing the paper away. "I can't get it, Dad. It's too much. The pressure, it's just so much." David nodded slowly. He pulled up a simple wooden chair and sat beside him. He didn't try to understand the math. He didn't offer advice about tensors or theorems. He spoke of his own life, a life of physical labor and quiet endurance. "When I was a boy working with your grandfather on the farm, the earth would get so hard. It would bake in the sun, and you'd think nothing could ever grow there again," David began, his voice taking on a narrative quality Leo had rarely heard. "You'd try to turn it with a plow and the plow would just bounce off. It would feel like you were breaking your back for nothing. But you didn't quit. You'd keep at it little by little, one pass at a time. And then, after a while, you'd start to see it. The soil would start to soften. The cracks would disappear. It was a slow thing, a hard thing, but you'd get there. You wouldn't force it, you'd just be patient with the earth. He looked at Leo, his eyes filled with a deep, unwavering love. That's what you're doing now, son. This isn't a race. This is just soil. You've got to be patient with it. You've got to keep turning it over even when it feels like it's never going to give. He got up and walked over to the small kitchen area, returning with a glass of water and a warm slice of pie he had brought home from the university cafeteria. Eat, he said simply. Your mind needs fuel, not just frustration. As Leo ate, the simple, profound wisdom of his father's words began to sink in. He wasn't a prodigy in some magical story. He was a boy, just like his father had been a boy on a farm with a hard task in front of him. The problem wasn't a wall to be climbed, but soil to be tilled. He looked back at the geometric shapes on the paper. He didn't see an impossible problem anymore. He saw a field waiting to be worked. He took a deep breath, picked up his pencil, and started over. He wasn't looking for a brilliant, instantaneous flash of insight. He was looking for the slow, methodical work of turning over the soil one small, painstaking step at a time. And as he began to work, the frustration started to lift. The numbers and symbols, which had seemed so hostile just moments before, now started to feel familiar again, like old friends waiting for him to come back to them. He was still a janitor's son. But he was also a future champion. And for the first time he felt that the two could exist in the same person, in the same world. He was no longer trying to escape his past. He was simply building on its foundation. This part establishes Leo's internal struggle and shows the profound impact of his father's support. It sets the stage for a new kind of resolve in Leo. In the next part, we could see him face Julian again, but this time with a new sense of confidence. What do you think about exploring how this newfound mental clarity affects his next confrontation with his rival? The Olympiad training sessions took on a new rhythm in the weeks that followed. The quiet hostility from Julian and his small circle had not vanished entirely, but it had softened into a grudging, resentful silence. They still didn't engage with Leo directly, but they no longer actively ignored him. The reason for this shift was simple. Leo had become indispensable. His unique way of seeing problems, his ability to cut through layers of complexity with a simple, elegant insight, had proven to be a consistent and undeniable asset. He was no longer just the kid who solved one lucky problem. He was the team's secret weapon. This new dynamic, however, put an immense weight on Leo's shoulders. Every problem he tackled was a performance, every solution a confirmation of his right to be there. He no longer felt the crushing self-doubt from before, thanks to his father's words, but the pressure to deliver was constant. He was no longer just a janitor's son trying to get by. He was a leader, a de facto mentor to those who had once looked down on him, and a key piece of a national team. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, the team was gathered in a small, airless seminar room, grappling with a problem that had stumped even the professors. It was a monster of a question, a brutal, multi-layered beast of a problem involving a unique set of nonlinear differential equations and their application to a complex physical system. Dr. Sharma had warned them it was one of the most difficult questions ever posed in a mock Olympiad. The solution, she had said with a grim smile, is somewhere in the intersection of two seemingly unrelated fields. The genius is in seeing the connection. Julian, of course, saw this as an opportunity to reassert his dominance. He had been working on the problem for a week, and he had a solution. A brilliant, convoluted one that relied on an obscure theorem he had learned in an exclusive summer seminar. He had spent hours on it, filling an entire whiteboard with dense, meticulous calculations. He presented it with a flourish, a theatrical performance of intellectual superiority. His solution was elegant, complex, and he was certain, correct. As you can see, Julian announced, gesturing to the board with a smirk, the solution lies in a novel application of the Chin-Snyder theorem. It's a method that requires a deep understanding of things not typically taught in standard curricula. The last part was clearly aimed at Leo, a pointed jab at his unconventional education. Lena, the quiet, analytical girl on the team, stared at the board, her brow furrowed. It's a beautiful solution, Julian, but I can't shake the feeling that it's not quite right. The initial conditions seemed to destabilize the equation. Marco, who had put his phone away, was now looking at the board with a skeptical eye. The theorem you're using, doesn't it have a specific constraint on the domain? You've generalized it here, and I'm not sure that's valid. Julian's confidence wavered for a fraction of a second. The constraint is easily addressed with a simple transform. It's a minor detail. But Leo was not looking at the whiteboard. He was staring out the window at the rain, his mind a million miles away. He was thinking of his father, of the hard earth, of the slow and patient work of turning over the soil. He saw the problem not as a complex series of equations, but as a vast, tangled field. He saw Julian's solution as a flash of lightning that might scorch the surface but would not reach the deep, fertile ground beneath. He walked slowly to the board, not with a marker but with a small, folded piece of paper in his hand. He didn't erase Julian's work. He simply stood beside it, and with a quiet, confident voice, he began to speak. The Chin-Snyder theorem is a beautiful piece of work, Julian. But you're right, Marco, the constraint on the domain is crucial. You can't just generalize it. It's like using a hammer to build a house when you really need a saw. Julian's face tightened with anger. And what do you propose, janitor? A mop and bucket. Leo ignored him. He looked at the problem again, not with a sense of panic, but with a deep, quiet certainty. The solution is not about a single, brilliant tool. It's about a series of small, careful steps. It's about seeing the fundamental structure of the problem, the core of what's really happening. He unfolded the paper he was holding. On it were a series of simple, elegant doodles, a small, intricate network of dots and lines, a crude graph theory representation of the problem's underlying structure. He wasn't solving it with an obscure theorem. He was solving it with a simple, foundational truth. The two seemingly unrelated fields Dr. Sharma was talking about, Leo continued, his voice gaining a quiet power, are graph theory and number theory. The problem isn't about the differential equations at all. They are just a distraction. The solution is about seeing the numbers as a network of nodes, a social structure with its own rules and relationships. If you see the problem that way, the solution becomes obvious. He picked up a marker and, next to Julian's sprawling, complicated proof, he wrote a single, elegant line of logic. It was a proof so simple, so direct, that it seemed to bypass all of Julian's work entirely. It was not a different path, it was a completely different universe. It was a solution that didn't just solve the problem, it illuminated its very essence. The room fell silent. Lena and Marco stared at the two solutions side by side. Julian's beautiful but ultimately flawed edifice, and Leo's simple, elegant truth. The difference was stark. Julian had tried to force the problem into a solution. Leo had let the problem reveal its own. Anya Sharma, who had been watching the entire exchange, walked to the board and stood between the two solutions. She didn't say a word. She simply reached out, and with a slow, deliberate motion, she erased Julian's work. She then looked at Leo, a profound look of respect and pride in her eyes. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice filled with a quiet finality, "the solution is found. Now we build on it. And we do it together." Julian, for the first time, had no retort. He looked at the empty space on the board, then at Leo, then at the single, undeniable truth that remained. The humiliation was complete, but this time there was a difference. It wasn't just a boy's pride that had been wounded. It was a profound, fundamental challenge to his entire way of seeing the world. And in that moment, in the quiet hum of the seminar room, the foundation of a real team was finally laid. The final weeks leading up to the International Olympiad were a blur of intense, focused preparation. The team, once a collection of brilliant but disparate individuals, had finally coalesced into a single unified force. The rivalry between Leo and Julian, which had once been a source of tension, had evolved into a strange and silent form of mutual respect. Julian still carried an air of aristocratic superiority, but he now acknowledged Leo's insights, often pausing his own work to listen when Leo spoke. The team sessions were no longer a battle for dominance but a collaborative effort to find the most elegant and efficient solutions. Anya Sharma watched them with a quiet sense of triumph. She hadn't just trained a genius, she had built a team. She saw in their shared effort the true spirit of mathematics, the relentless pursuit of truth through collaboration, not competition. As she handed them their final practice problem, she felt a surge of pride. They were ready. They had all, in their own way, been forged by the fire of each other's intellect. On the other side of the campus, David was going about his daily routine. But his world, too, had been fundamentally altered. The hallways he mopped were now adorned with posters and banners for the university's Olympiad team. His son's face, earnest and serious, was on every wall. The students who had once walked past him without a glance now saw him, not as a janitor, but as the father of the school's most unlikely prodigy. Some offered him a nod of respect, a few even stopped to wish him luck. The quiet anonymity of his life was gone, replaced by a sense of shared pride that was both a blessing and a burden. He was proud, of course, a deep, bone-weary pride that settled in his chest. But he was also terrified. He had given his son the permission to fly, and now he had to watch as he soared into an unfamiliar sky, hoping he wouldn't fall. The day of the competition arrived with the crisp, electric feel of a momentous occasion. The team gathered in the pre-dawn light, their faces a mix of nerves and determination. They wore matching blazers, a symbol of their unity, a uniform that felt strange and heavy on Leo's shoulders. David was there too, standing in the back of the crowd of parents and professors, a silent, solitary figure. He and Leo exchanged a long look. There were no words, none were needed. In that single gaze was all the love, fear, and pride that had brought them to this moment. The team was ushered into the main examination hall, a cavernous, high-ceilinged room filled with the hushed tension of 1,000 brilliant minds from around the world. The air was thick with the scent of new paper and the collective anxiety of students on the precipice of their academic lives. The proctors, with their stern, unsmiling faces, distributed the exam booklets. The low, rhythmic clatter of pencils being placed on desks was the only sound in the vast room. Leo sat down at his assigned desk, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He saw his teammates, Julian, Lena, and Marco, each a small island of concentration in the sea of competitors. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He didn't think of his father, or the professors, or the weight of expectation. He thought of his father's words, the image of the hard earth, and the patient, methodical work of turning it over. When the proctor finally announced, "You may begin," Leo opened his eyes. He looked down at the first problem, a dense, formidable block of text. It was not a wall to be climbed or an enemy to be defeated. It was a puzzle, a field waiting to be tilled, a story waiting to be told. And for the first time in his life, he knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He picked up his pencil, and without a single moment of hesitation, he began to write. The examination hall was a world unto itself, a silent crucible of intellect where time seemed to expand and contract with the difficulty of each problem. Hours blurred into minutes as Leo worked, his mind a quiet, disciplined engine of thought. He moved through the exam not with the frantic desperation of some of his competitors, but with the steady, patient rhythm of a man turning over the earth. His hands, though holding a pencil instead of a mop, moved with the same methodical grace his father had taught him. The problems were not a series of traps but a landscape to be explored, a series of fields waiting to be tilled. He finished the first two parts of the exam with a quiet confidence, knowing his solutions were sound. But as he turned to the final, most daunting problem, a collective groan echoed through the hall, a soft wave of dismay from hundreds of students who had spent years preparing for this moment. The problem was a masterpiece of cruelty, a fiendishly complex question that seemed to defy all known methods. It was a problem designed to be unsolvable, a final filter to separate the brilliant from the truly exceptional. It combined aspects of topology, discrete mathematics, and a particularly obscure branch of number theory in a way that seemed to render all conventional approaches useless. Leo looked at the problem. For a moment, the old doubt, the ghost of imposter syndrome, threatened to rear its head. He could almost hear Julian's sneering voice, the collective skepticism of a world that had dismissed him. He felt the weight of his father's hopes, Anya's belief, the entire university's reputation resting on his shoulders. But then he remembered the hard earth. He remembered his father's words, "You have to be patient with it." He closed his eyes and let go of the pressure, the fear, the need to prove anything. He wasn't solving a problem for them. He was solving it for himself. He opened his eyes and saw the problem not as a jumble of symbols, but as a vast, interconnected landscape. He saw the numbers and functions not as cold, abstract entities, but as nodes in a network, a complex social structure with hidden connections and unspoken rules. He saw Julian's solution from weeks before, a beautiful but flawed edifice, and he saw how this problem was a larger, more formidable version of the same trap. It wasn't about brute forcing an obscure theorem. It was about seeing the fundamental, underlying truth. He picked up his pencil and began to write, not a series of complex calculations but a story. He started with the most basic principles of formal logic, building a new framework from the ground up, a foundation of his own making. He used a hybrid of his own intuitive methods and the formal knowledge he had absorbed over the last 2 months. He worked with a calm, decisive rhythm, a quiet certainty that filled his corner of the vast room. He wasn't solving the problem. He was illuminating its very essence, peeling back the layers to reveal a shockingly simple and elegant core. When he finished, there was a profound sense of peace. He put his pencil down, leaned back in his chair, and looked out the window at the sky, a vast and limitless space he now felt a part of. He knew with an unshakable certainty that he had found the answer. The days that followed were a long, agonizing wait. The results were announced at a grand closing ceremony in the university's main auditorium, a sprawling hall filled to the brim with students, professors, and family members from around the world. David was there, of course, sitting in the back, his hands clasped nervously in his lap. He felt a different kind of anxiety now, not the fear of humiliation, but the immense, crushing hope that his son had found a place in this world. The medals were given out first, bronze and silver. The names were called, each one a testament to years of hard work, each student walking up to the stage to a wave of applause. The university's team had done well, with Lena and Marco both earning bronze medals for their impressive performances. Julian, to his visible dismay, had only managed a silver, a painful second-place finish that was a source of great pride for his parents, but a bitter disappointment for him. Then came the final announcement, the moment everyone was waiting for. The gold medal. The single, most prestigious award in the entire competition. A hush fell over the crowd as the head of the Olympiad committee stepped to the podium. The winner of the gold medal for this year's International Olympiad, he announced, his voice booming through the speakers, is from our host country. For a solution that was not only correct, but breathtakingly original, a solution that demonstrated a level of insight and ingenuity that we haven't seen in years, we are proud to award the gold medal to Leo. The name hung in the air, a perfect, crystalline sound. A roar of applause erupted in the hall, a thunderous, joyous sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. The professors from the university stood up, clapping and cheering, their faces alight with pride. Anya Sharma was in tears, a beautiful, genuine smile on her face. And in the back of the room, David, the silent janitor, rose to his feet, his hands clapping together, a wave of emotion so powerful it threatened to bring him to his knees. He was no longer invisible. His son was no longer invisible. Leo walked to the stage, the blazer on his shoulders no longer feeling strange and heavy, but a part of him, a new skin he had earned. He walked past Julian, who stood up and for the first time, looked him in the eye with a genuine, unvarnished respect. There was no resentment, no jealousy, just a quiet, profound acknowledgement of greatness. "You were right," Julian said, his voice barely a whisper. "You saw the truth." On stage, with the gold medal around his neck, Leo looked out at the crowd. He saw Anya Sharma, her face filled with pride. He saw his teammates, their smiles honest and warm. And then he saw his father, standing alone in the back, a man who had taught him how to work with his hands and how to see with his heart. Their eyes met, and in that moment all the years of quiet humiliation, all the struggle, all the fear, all of it simply melted away. He knew that his life would never be the same. He was no longer just the janitor's son. He was a champion, a mathematician, a mind that had found its place in the world. He was a man who had turned over the hard earth and watched something beautiful grow. And as he stood on that stage, in the middle of a world that had once dismissed him, he realized he wasn't just standing there for himself. He was standing there for his father, a silent monument to the enduring power of quiet dignity, and the simple, profound truth that a man's worth is not in the work he does, but in the spirit with which he does it. The story had started with a humiliation, but it ended with a triumph that belonged not just to him but to them both. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.